Now let's take a look at a memory map of what's going on here. So we had a class pet that we declared an object, your pet, and then this new. So when we are here, your pet, and then new, what will happen? It calls a constructor pet. So in the main method, we have your pet that assigns a value in the memory, for example, 30. So if it's the memory and it starts from here and this is 30, this is the address of the memory, then it comes here and initializes all the variables. So when we make it, it has a string, integer, and a double. So it puts Mr. Moon and then 2 and then 5.5 to the memory. That's how it works. So if we just initialize it with only the name, if we just have this one, so what it does, okay, it doesn't put anything for the weight and the age. It only puts Mr. Moon here. So by having this part, when we say new, it assigns a part of memory with this address. And then when we say call constructor that his name is pet, call this constructor with and initialize it with Mr. Moon, it comes here. So it refers to this part of the memory, this address, and then it puts that value here. One notice about constructors is that we can call methods inside these constructors. If you look at this example, you see pet constructor with 3 parameters that is calling set pet method with 3 parameters to initialize, to set that values in those instance variables. So let's look at the example of pet2 class. That is a better version of pet class that we've already had, and just remove that redundancies that we have. All right, let's look at class pet2 that we have. This is the same as pet1, but we want to call a method inside our constructors. So the same, we have these instance variables, but notice that we are initializing them here. So private string name equals no name yet, age equals 0, and weight equals 0. Then after declaring our variables, our instance variables, now we have our constructors. We know that this is a constructor because there is no return here. Public, all of them are public, and then the same as the class. The name is the same as the class name. Pet2. This one has 3 parameters: initial name, initial age, and initial weight. And then it is calling a method named set. So set initial name, initial age, and initial weight. So it passes through all these parameters that it has. The second constructor, it has 1 parameter, just initial name, as string, and then it calls method set with that 3 parameters, but it just sets initial name, and then the other parameters are 0. Then we have our next constructor with 1 parameter of integer. So it calls set method, no name yet because it doesn't have it, and then it puts initial age and the other parameter 0. Then we have pet2 with a parameter of double for initial weight, and it calls set method, no name yet, and the second parameter is 0, and then it sets initial weight value for this method. The next one, the next constructor, as you see, it doesn't have any parameter. That's why we call it default constructor. So in this default constructor, we call set method, no name yet, 0 and 0 as parameters. Then we have our setter methods here, set pet, and it has 3 parameters, new name, new age, and new weight. As you see, the same, it is calling set method with these parameters, the same. And then we have set name that has 1 parameter of a string for new name, and it's calling set method with this one, that it sets the new name as it gets it, and then the other one doesn't change. So age and weight won't change. They would have their default values as been set at the beginning of the class. Then we have our set age to set the new age value into our age instance variables. So as you see, it's calling set method with name and weight that they are unchanged, and it just passes new age as it gets it from the user. And then the other setter method for set weight that has a parameter of double for new weight, and it sets new weight here in the set method, and name and age won't change. They would have their default values. Then now here, as you see, we have our set method. In this set method, we have 3 parameters. That's why we were calling it with 3 parameters. And then it sets and gets these new values, and it assigns these local values to our instance variable. So just notice that our instance variable is at the left side, and then this is at the right side. So we assign this to name, and then it checks if new age and new weight are valid, are greater than or equal to 0, and it sets them here. Otherwise, it exists if they have negative values. Then we have our getter methods here. String get name returns name, and get age, it returns age, and get weight, it returns weight. And then at the end, we have our write output that prints out the values that we have in our name, age, and weight. So here is the pet2 demo that is the same as pet demo, and if we run it, as you see, it would be the same. So if I just change it to something like 2, and if I run it again, you see that it is calling set with the second value for 2, and the others are set as their default. So that was all for these constructors and these methods with calling another method inside them. Here we have another version of pet class that is called pet3, the Java. In this class, we're going to call a constructor in another constructor. So let's see how we can write this class with a constructor calling another constructor. As you see here, we have our instance variables, the same, name, age, weight, that are private, and we haven't initialized them here. Then we have our constructor, pet3. As you see, it's a constructor because it doesn't return anything. And the name is the same as our class, pet3. And then we have three parameters: initial name, initial age, and initial weight. In this constructor, we're calling method set to set these values in our instance variables. In line 17, we have another constructor, pet3, with one parameter, initial name, as string. This is a constructor that we want to call the other constructor. So here, this initial name 00, this here means pet3, the first one, in line 13. With these three parameters, it is calling this constructor. So when we have three parameters, so it's calling pet3, and pet3 has a constructor with three parameters. So this here means pet3 constructor with three parameters, and it's calling method set inside of itself, and it runs this and initialize instance variables with that name and the others with 0. Then again, we have another constructor, but with integer value of initial age. And now again, we're calling constructor pet3 with three parameters, but the name has no name yet, this value, and weight has 0 value, and it's setting initial age with this parameter, with this value here. The same for this constructor. We have double initial weight as parameter, and it's calling the same constructor in line 13 because it has three parameters. So it sets name to no name yet, age to 0, and weight to initial weight, the value that it's getting from here. And we have default constructor that is calling pet3 constructor with no name yet for name, and 0 for age, and weight for 0 as the default value for all these instance variables. Okay, then here we have our setters, the same as before that we had. And then here we have again the set method that is setting all the values to our instance variables. And we have the same getters. So all these methods were the same as pet class that we had before. And also write out This is a very good example how to call constructor inside another constructor and how we can write our classes in a professional way. Let's recap whatever we've learned so far in this section. Constructors are special methods that create and initialize objects of a class. And there is no return type in these constructors. If we have a return type, a void, or any data type, they're called methods. They're not constructors. And also we have a default constructor that has no parameters. Before learning constructors, when we created a class and we didn't make any constructor, Java puts default constructor itself. But when we write a constructor, Java doesn't put any default constructor, so we need to write that.